Pete Wepler is with the Army Corps of Engineers, the famous Corps. He's chief of the environmental branch in the New York District and has had a huge portfolio of work in wetlands around the harbor and also with disaster relief.
Thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this panel. It's kind of odd that we have a biologist talking about the Corps Shore Protection Program, so I'll throw that out there because that's what we're heavily involved in the region right now. And I truly took the mantra of going for 5 minutes, so I have 3 slides that I'm going to talk to. So for the sake of time, I hope you appreciate that. For those who don't know, this is our project map for the New York District. I just want to highlight some of the programs that's within here. Basically, as we all know, Sandy remapped the shoreline within our New York, New Jersey HRE region. And the Corps and myself, actually personally, been very busy trying to restore coastal restoration within the boundaries of our district. The first wash or first flood of work that was within the district was flood coastal emergency projects, which basically restored the shoreline back to what they were pre-Sandy. And then we, through PL 113-2, which was the Sandy Appropriations Act, we received funding to actually restore the shorelines back to project design. So the dredges that we've seen within the New Jersey shoreline, the Rockaway shoreline, Coney Island, and for those that are aware of out east, we're bringing sand back to our, originally designed projects that were built in, in the early 70s, 80s, and some in the 90s. So that was our first phase of participation besides our FEMA missions within the district themselves. For those projects, unfortunately, there was no opportunity to incorporate what the Corps is using now called natural nature-based features, which is basically the Corps way of saying green infrastructure. How do we incorporate them? Because we were restoring projects to the original design, which didn't have them particularly in there, besides our dune and berm system with planted dunes, which here is considered a soft solution, we didn't have an opportunity. However, at the same time, the headquarters part of the Corps, from that same Sandy Disaster Appropriation Act, has the North Atlantic Coast Comprehensive Study going on. And that there's been workshops. I know there was one last June talking about these features specifically that was in the Hoboken area. And they've been going up and down the coast between Maine and Virginia to discuss, what are the needs, what are the data needs, what are the regulatory needs or constraints to incorporate these things, and how can we put them in project planning. And the intent was not just to incorporate it into core project planning, but into others that are providing solutions to the post-Sandy world. As you can see, a lot of these things follow our traditional ecosystem restoration, which is why we're all here. And the idea of how can we tap into those Sandy funds to incorporate that. And that's where the fun begins now. Now, on top of the FCCE work, which I just highlighted, we actually have a suite of studies called ongoing studies that were highlighted within. There were 2 reports that the Corps prepared for the Congress that highlighted what studies need to be funded in advance and constructed within the region. So the areas within the HRE region, which I'd like to highlight, would be the East Rockaway to Rockaway Inlet, Jamaica Bay, shore protection. Well, now it's Coastal Storm Risk Management Project. In the old days, they were called beach erosion and hurricane protection, and different design back then. And here's a biologist telling you about engineering design. But that design was more berm-based with no dune and dealt more with erosion versus the actual storm surge that we're concerned with today. Staten Island is an ongoing study which is being funded, and we due to the Rebuild Iowa design, we hope to actually coordinate. This is the idea to highlight too, is to coordinate such studies to how would that affect what we're proposing now. And that's broken down into two sections: the north part and the southern part of Staten Island coast. And also within Raritan Bay, we have project in Highlands and a project in Leonardo. Leonardo now is basically a house raising or non-structural or a structure raising project with highlighting, I think, 19 structures that actually would satisfy that community's need. And Highlands, which is still early in its design phase, which we're looking at. But just to highlight, I guess, what we're really near to our heart right now with the Corps is the Rockaway Inlet and Jamaica Bay SCSRM job. That project, as we all know, has your traditional beach template going on the Atlantic shoreline, and this is a project that was authorized back in 1964, and it was partially built in the 70s. And then actually renourished in the 90s, and it really focused on the shoreline itself of the Atlantic coast. For the Jamaica Bay shoreline, within Jamaica Bay proper, the report, highlighted a suite of tidal gates, and some back bay, bulkheading, and hard structures, and alternatives such as that. However, now the Corps is reevaluating that, and this is how can we incorporate these measures into the actual new design. So in order to do that, the one concern now the Corps has is from an evaluation perspective, the Corps has no metric that actually considers these measures compared to our traditional hard structures from a benefit-cost ratio. And for those that don't know, for the Corps, they implement a project that has to have a benefit-cost ratio over 1, but you have to have your best bang for your buck. Simply speaking, your best bang for your buck for the alternative that you're putting up there. So right now, at this present time, we do not have a metric to actually evaluate these MBS. However, there's been an acknowledged need in tying back to the COM study, which I referenced before, highlights that there's a need that a metric either has to be developed or we have to call out projects now multi-purpose, which then would tie in the actual shore, the CSRM perspective of the jobs, the shore protection portion, with ecological restoration, and we do have tools within the Corps to do that. Now, being that Rockaway is definitely highlighted as a pilot to incorporate within the NAD region, which is the Maine to Virginia shoreline, an area that we can utilize these MDFs. The Corps is actually, the district is going to forge ahead and provide what we think metrics should be to measure this. They are being developed now. We're looking to use possibly what other sister federal agencies have been using for NERDA evaluations, like habitat equivalency analysis. We're looking to see what TNC utilized when they did their Howard Beach analysis, which basically took a model from the West Coast and then utilized some dollar figures for things like that. But being that, for the purpose of this panel, the hardest part from the Corps perspective to implement anything is having evaluation metrics that can pass our muster through our report review. In order to get to that point, from a regulatory perspective, acknowledging that some of these MDFs may be put in spots that we have to ensure that we're putting the right feature where it can exist. Does this wetland, or would it exist in the right spot? Would this oyster reef be in the right spot? So we have to ensure that whatever we propose actually fits within the system itself. And then we have to focus on, which was highlighted a couple times already today, what standard evaluation metrics from performance metrics would be. And this is working with the New WIPIC grant and some other folks going around. So I guess just to highlight once again that yes, the Corps is definitely the big player out there that's evaluating putting these MBFs within the system. We're aware of the regulatory challenges to do that, and we're working with our stakeholders to do that. And we are participating with many stakeholders to try and take comments within to evaluate these MBFs. And once again, we're going to be the pilot for the Corps of Engineers to see how can we incorporate nature-based features within our traditional CSRM portfolio. Thank you very much.